Maybe we'll clap. That will make sure people are aware, that we're here. No, thank you so much, and it's really a pleasure to, not only welcome people, but also talk about the case study of Science Diplomacy Hub. So clicker-wise, I'm wondering where it is. Maybe I should not use it. Let's see if it works. Maybe here. Okay. So I'll be very German, and I will make this very concise and to the point. So highlighting a few points that will showcase how we've been able to launch such a Science Diplomacy Hub at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg Center in Washington, D.C. So I won't reiterate what has been said already, but as we know, across the spectrum of diplomatic and academic domains, various institutions have been trying to bridge the gap between the worlds of science and diplomacy, but the missing element in a lot of these efforts has been this key place for individuals and organizations to, again, convene on a regular basis. And regularity is, I think, a very, very important point, and we're fortunate to have such a beautiful center to launch our science diplomacy events here. And this is where you can, again, come and meet someone, say hi to, let's say you're a scientist, maybe you'll talk with a diplomat or a policymaker, a business leader, or what have you, and start these collaborations. But importantly, so I would like to highlight the role of higher education institutions in science diplomacy. So particularly highlighting that the institution's expertise in research and other fields can be brought to these global policy development conversations. And universities, I mentioned this during our early morning workshops today as well, that universities that have science degree programs, and others obviously as well, are very well positioned actually to engage in science diplomacy, knowing that not all, but a lot of the scientists, I'm a very positive person, so hopefully scientists can be natural diplomats. So they have this ability to collaborate with different people from different parts of the world or different fields. So they have this characteristic of collaboration and education that have the potential to be used in diplomatic arenas as well. So now, specifically, again, we're at Johns Hopkins University, and in order to realize the full potential of science diplomacy, it is crucial, really, for such global education institutions to establish a science diplomacy hub that could be the convener of these relevant conversations and transition from dialogues to action. So I mentioned also that that's exactly what we did, right? So we put our heads together with Professor Peter Agre, who is not only an incredible scientist, right? He received his Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2003 for discovering a coporin that allows water to enter cells. And because of his scientific nature and his status, right, as a Nobel laureate, he has been able to go to countries that diplomatically we don't really engage with. So everything from Cuba to Iran, North Korea, we did actually a documentary viewing as part of our Science Diplomacy Hub programming on his scientific expeditions to North Korea, and how there's this famous story of Peter giving the tie that he wore when he received the Nobel Prize to a scientist in North Korea, and said, please give this tie to the first North Korean who's going to receive the Nobel Prize, maybe a Peace Prize, for example, right? That would be nice. So Peter and I put our, again, heads together and launched the Science Diplomacy Hub here in the heart of Washington. And it's a key location for us to do this because we're steps away from Capitol Hill, White House, other major federal institutions. And our key goals include, again, bridging the science world with the policymaking world, whether it's national and global scales, and really bring the cutting-edge research and expertise to these global policymaking conversations, and bridge the educational and professional gaps between the current and future professionals in science and diplomacy, and contribute really a contemporary perspective about science diplomacy. So all of the convenings that we do, so for example, I'll mention, and the next point will be the specific example of the Science Diplomacy Summit that we have every year. And that, for example, allows us to really reflect what do people care about. I don't want to just say, let's work on quantum, because I'm coming from the quantum material side myself, right? So that's my science background. And I don't want to necessarily say that's what we should be talking about during the summit, but that is, for example, what the organizations who speak, they choose to lead these discussions about these relevant topics. So again, mentioning the Science Diplomacy Summit, So we do a lot of convenings. For example, this one is also part of our programming. So they're high-profile, high-impact events where we have everyone. So around the room, you can see people from policy-making circles, diplomacy, you can see business, nonprofits, students, and they want to learn about all these topics ranging from AI to health, to climate change innovation, polar diplomacy, ocean diplomacy, many, many things. And one of the most prominent examples, again, is the inaugural Science Diplomacy Summit that happened this year in April. And we hosted the summit over 2 days, and a lot of people here, I think, have participated or spoke at the summit, and we had more than 40 countries represented during the summit, and we had more than 40 different high-level panels and discussions and demos over the 2 days. So the summit, including specific sessions, for example, there was one called Being a Science Advisor to the US Secretary of State, so past, present, and future. So Dr. Bill Colglazier is here, sitting in the front row, was one of our panelists, and we're really, really grateful that we're able to actually have such bright minds as part of our speaking lineup. And we've seen audiences being able to engage then with these people who otherwise you might never interact with once again. Other sessions, they were called Ambassadors in Science Diplomacy. So we had ambassadors from countries ranging from Finland to Belgium, the United Kingdom, for example. Then we had Portugal represented as well, who spoke about their national perspectives about why science diplomacy is even important, let's say, for their countries. So we heard them talk. Then Diplomacy Microgravity, that's also an example of a private sector-led session. So that was run by Axiom Space, a company. And then we had How Does AI Change Art? So that's also an interesting choice. That was done by the Austrian embassy. And we really saw artists engage in the session where the speakers were, for example, from New York, right? Someone who maybe is not a scientist or a diplomat, but working, again, with science from the Austrian perspective. So then the next point, and I don't know how much time, Jan, let me know when, the pivotal role of young scholars. So the Johns Hopkins University Science Diplomacy Hub and other thrusts in science policy and diplomacy that are happening, they allow really graduate students, undergraduate students, and postdocs, faculty from all fields to have these conversations with people from all the different sectors that I mentioned. And again, they're very accessible and provide hands-on opportunities to establish these collaborations. And we really want to show the role of these young minds in forging the international partnerships that don't just last for a week, but ideally they're sustainable. And we've seen that happen with the countries such as, I'll highlight Belgium, Japan, and Switzerland. So these countries, for example, we have collaborated with on writing publications. So there was a new article that came out. It's a preprint done with the Embassy of Japan, for example, where we looked at the expectations of science diplomacy, whether it's for all of humanity or is it for, let's say, more kind of a national interest. So there's this tension going on, and we really try to take a quantitative view at this topic. So please do look at it if you're interested. And I'll finish by saying that with the current geopolitical landscape, we all heard that today, there's a lot of connection between, again, the diplomacy, the policy with breakthroughs in quantum AI, and you have synthetic biology, space exploration, and really the universities here have such a beautiful opportunity to become players in the foreign policy development, as evidenced by their ability to really build the capacity, the networks, and reciprocity between nations. So what's next? Well, I do believe that universities and other organizations have this collection of some of the brightest minds in the world. So I think we can use our expertise in these different fields to really ensure that scientists can be positioned as diplomats as well. And really, my hope is that the work of the Johns Hopkins Science Diplomacy Hub acts as a source of a spark, inspiration for others to do this as well, and really become also players of these global science diplomacy conversations. So I'll finish here. Jan, am I on time? Beautiful. Thank you.